Hi everyone, my name is Jante Veripto and I'm the President and CEO of Save the Children. I'm excited to be speaking to you today as we are commemorating International Women's Day and to highlight the critical importance of supporting girls and women leaders here in the US and across the world. Firstly, let me express my gratitude to the US Chamber of Commerce Foundation for providing this space to lift up the voices of girls. I also want to take a moment to thank our fantastic partners at Procter & Gamble for their partnership to tackle issues of equality and inclusion through their programs and voice. Advancing gender equality is not only the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. And we've known this for quite some time. We often talk about gender parity in the workforce, but just as critical is women's equal participation in politics, which leads to tangible gains for democracy and can lead to better policy. Only 25% of national parliamentarians across the world are women currently. And we know that women and girls face barriers that prevent them from fully participating in civic life, from discrimination to gender-based violence to unequal burdens of domestic labor. With business as usual, currently we think it will take more than 145 years to achieve equal participation of women in politics. And achieving equity for women begins with equity for girls. It begins in childhood. Girls have brilliant ideas, have a fantastic voice. They deserve a seat at the table, particularly when it comes to decisions that affect them. And they deserve our support on their leadership journey. As they say, nothing about us without us. It is this belief that stands behind our work to promote girls' civic leadership. Also with great partners like P&G through programs like We See Equal in Mexico and Indonesia. This program has reached over 28,000 girls and adults participate in gender transformative programs to help all children achieve their full potential. And one of those girls will be with us today. Save the Children also advocates for policy solutions like the Girls Leadership Engagement, Agency and Development Act, the Girls Lead Act. This is a bipartisan bill which would invest in increasing girls' civic participation around the world through the mechanics of US foreign assistance. And we are delighted to see energy around this issue from both the private sector as well as government, both of whom recognize the enormous benefit of investing in girls' leadership potential. We're especially encouraged to see efforts like the Biden administration's White House initiative on advancing women's and girls' civic and political leadership, announced at the Summit for Democracy late last year. And in spite of the challenges they face, young girls are achieving incredible things every day. Save the Children has witnessed these girls in our programs, advocate to their school boards, start climate change initiatives in their community, and also talk to their peers' families about how harmful early girl marriage would be. They do a lot and it's not always visible. I truly believe that there is no limit to what young girls can achieve if we are also there to support them. We are particularly excited for you to hear remarks from our intergenerational lineup of speakers, including a great strong champion for the role of women and girls in civic life, Congresswoman Cathy McMorris-Rodgers, and the co-chairs of the Bipartisan Women's Congressional Caucus, Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez-Colon and Congresswoman Madeline Dean. We will also hear from two young leaders supported by Save the Children from the United States and Mexico in a fireside chat moderated by Alison Tubman, who's the global program leader for Procter & Gamble. In closing, I invite you to consider how we can work together across public and private sectors to amplify girls' voices, remove the barriers in their way, and build the next generation of trailblazers. I wish you all a happy International Women's Day.
Hi, everyone. It's Cathy McMorris-Rodgers from Eastern Washington. And more than anything, I want to encourage you to imagine what's possible and work hard to make it happen. Growing up, I never dreamed that this girl from Kettle Falls, Washington, a town of 1,224 people, would one day become the 200th woman ever to serve in the United States House of Representatives. Thanks to some of the life and leadership skills I learned from my mentors, this girl from a small town in Eastern Washington has lived the American dream. Because when we empower young girls to rise, the possibilities are endless. I truly believe that. Together, we must work to engage girls in civics and public service. We must dare our next generation of young women to be bold, to chase their dreams, and to never give up. With more women empowered, we can support a new generation of transformational leaders in democracies around the world. And I will continue working with my colleagues on Capitol Hill to help each and every girl pursue their dreams. Imagine what's possible and work hard to make it happen. Thanks for having me.
As we celebrate International Women's Day, it is important that we highlight our political leaders as well. We're joined by Congresswoman Dean of Pennsylvania and Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon, co-chairs of the Congressional Women's Caucus. Congresswoman Dean, Congresswoman Gonzalez, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So first, I would like to start by asking, what were the first examples of women leaders when you were growing up? And how did the 15-year-old version of you define leadership? Let's start with you, Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon.
Oh, that's a tough question when you try to look back how you entered in politics, or who were your role models at the time. I mean, I'm 45 years old right now, and I entered politics when I was at high school. I think actually it's 8th grade or something like that. And at that time, I mean, we were looking to Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. We were looking to, examples from the past, Golda Meir in Israel, the Queen of England, among many others. In my local version in Puerto Rico, I think there was a Speaker of the House at that time. That was the first woman elected. And how I may define that leadership, I think is a little bit with oratory, how that leaders can impress you by being assertive and a call to action, specifically saying and being tough. I mean, I come from an island that we do have a male culture, right, of power. Men are the one in positions of power. And when you see that, and you know that you can finally get a role model or a woman doing that kind of a job in politics, it automatically is the person you're going to follow. You're going to see how they can do things. And I will say that the next item for me at that time was that there was a lot of corruption in politics at that time, and the women that were held in office at the time were the only ones that you can feel the honesty about when they were speaking. So I will say honesty. I will say, how assertive and their oratory, bringing things and bringing issues that really matters to the community. I mean, trying to be the 15-year-old version of me.
No, that is great. Thank you for sharing that and sort of highlighting sort of leaders around the world that were examples and continue to be examples for women in leadership in various capacities. Congresswoman Dean, how would you define leadership, the 15-year-old version of you?
Well, Shanique, it's very good to be with you. You'll have to excuse the buzzing in the background, which is a call to votes. We're working women after all. It's very good to be with you and the Chamber Foundation. Jennifer, it's always good to be with you and to lift up International Women's Day. I don't think the 15-year-old, I'm not going to reveal my age like Jennifer just did, but I don't think the 15-year-old me thought in terms of the words of leadership. I think I thought, and growing up, I'm the youngest of 7 children. I have 5 older brothers and an older sister, thank God. But I didn't think in terms of leadership. I did think in terms of being very honest about what I saw, what was going on. So I think I was opinionated, I hope not in a negative way, but to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And maybe that is something that moves you toward public service. I will say at 18 years of age, I was first asked to run for office by a husband and wife team in politics. So certainly they provided me role models for serving the local community. And so when I was 18 years old, I ran for office, had campaign. And first time I voted in an American election, I voted for myself and I won. I would say my models beyond the global ones, and Margaret Thatcher, Golda Meir, I agree with you, Jennifer, extraordinary examples. But many of my models were just the women who I had the good fortune of being related to or being around. My grandmothers were both very strong women in their own places, in their own work, had careers. My mother, an extraordinary person, a leader. And one of the most important leaders in my life was my godmother, who was just a remarkable woman of wisdom and strength, and showed leadership without ever saying it.
Wow. And you're mentioning being the youngest of 7, am I correct?
Yes.
I think it's almost natural for you to have a big voice in that birth order to make sure that you're heard. So the leadership.
You can picture the dinner table at my house. You're exactly right. You could not be shy.
I can only imagine. Now, Congresswoman Gonzalez Colon, you entered the Puerto Rico House of Representatives in 2002 as the youngest elected member at the time. And Congresswoman Dean, you led an illustrious career, attorney, professor, township commissioner, and now member of Congress. I would say, what motivated you to run for congressional office? Congresswoman Gonzalez Colon, let's start with you.
I will say that in my case, I was, elected when I was 25 years old because there was an open seat in the place I was living in my district. And I was the only, young person running for that position. And I remember my father telling me, the people that are running are so bad that even if you run, you may win. And I was like, I don't know if that is an endorsement, but we got a vote in my own house, right? I was living with my parents and my siblings, and my father and my brother voted for me. My mother and my sister decided for me not to go into politics. So I was the decisive vote at that table in my house. It was a special primary. It was just 30 days campaign, so it's a short notice. But I will tell you why. Because I decided that instead of criticizing politicians or saying, bad things about them, I say, I will take my time. I will do the best I can, in order to represent my community. And I did, and I won, and then I won a large position, which is the whole island. Then I became a Speaker of the House, Minority Leader. I was 14 years at the State House. And why I decided to run for Congress, I will be very honest with you. People of Puerto Rico have been part of the U.S. since 1898. Yesterday, we just celebrated 105th anniversary of U.S. citizenship. But we're still a territory of the United States, and we want to become a state. And the people of Puerto Rico voted not once or twice, 3 times in a row, telling Congress, we want to become a state of the nation. And my generation grew up, looking at the civil rights movement, having been able to read about it. I studied law, and still you have 3.2 million American citizens back home that are not allowed to vote for their commander-in-chief. They're not allowed to vote for 2 senators or having representation in Congress. Actually, I represent the people of Puerto Rico in Congress, and I cannot vote on the floor for all the measures that affect us day by day. So I will say the reason I ran for Congress, it was to put a voice and action for the Americans living on the island to achieve equality through the right to vote.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And Congresswoman Dean?
Well, Jennifer, that's inspiring to me. You're absolutely right. I join you in that fight for statehood for Puerto Rico.
Thank you.
I was thinking about this as you were talking, and maybe my younger self was very influenced. Again, I'm a generation older than Jennifer. Was very influenced by the 60s, by civil rights, by the Vietnam War, with 2 brothers serving, one in Vietnam and one stateside. With the assassination of JFK, I was a very little girl. I don't remember much about that, but I remember the cloud that put over my house, the sheer sadness of it. And then, of course, April of '68, Martin Luther King, and then June of '68, Bobby Kennedy. As a little girl, I believed that great leaders, sadly, were men. I didn't perceive it in that way, but the great leaders were always assassinated. And then we had, of course, Vietnam War, Watergate, and the rest. So I think throughout my childhood and youth, I cared a lot about what were leaders saying, what were leaders doing, and what were bad leaders doing, and how do we make sure we do not have more of those bad leaders. Fast forward, I had the chance to be a trial lawyer, to be a professor while we were raising young children, but I always knew I wanted to get into public service. So I did have the chance to serve, like you, Jennifer, in the State House, Pennsylvania State House. I served for 6.5 years. But I think it was the election of 2016 that just catapulted me to say, I have to do something more, and then had the chance to run in 2018 for Congress. It's been an extraordinary 3 or 4 years so far. It's a privilege of a lifetime, but it is to make the difference that Jennifer was just talking about, to make sure we lift up the voice of everyone, women, girls, the marginalized, those who are impoverished, those who are oppressed by way of minority. So it is just a passion for helping another, serving my constituents, and shaping our future to the good.
Thank you, thank you. And I recognize that the buzzer has sounded, and you may have to leave shortly for the vote. I wanted to make sure that we speak about Ukraine, with everything that's taking place. And I will start with you, Congresswoman Dean. What message would you have for the people of Ukraine about what's taking place?
Well, thank you, Shanique, for making sure that we do not ever not talk about this. I have a very robust and terrific Ukrainian American community in my district, which is suburban Philadelphia, the 4th Congressional District. I've been in touch with the leaders there. In fact, the honorary consul to Philadelphia for Ukraine is one of my constituents, so we're on the phone a lot. What I want to say to Ukraine is we, number one, admire you. We admire your extraordinary courage, led by President Zelensky, a young democracy. It's such an important reminder to us who have a little bit older democracy, but still as important and still showing signs of fragility. So just lift up the Ukrainian people, the courage they are showing, from the president through the military, through citizens, ordinary people like you and me, saying, no, I will stand up and fight for my democracy. It matters for me, and more importantly, it matters for our children. On the side here, I'm very proud of the role that this administration has played to galvanize the global community and to make sure that the best information was out there as to the despicable nature of the actions that were to come by Mr. Putin. Unprovoked, depraved destruction, death. We have now more than 1 million refugees, and it will go probably as high as 5 million refugees. So my message to citizens here and Ukrainians around the world, especially in Ukraine, is that we stand with you. The world is united in condemnation of Mr. Putin, and this Congress is working alongside the administration to make sure you get the sanctions you need, the weapons you need, the humanitarian needs that you have, as well as making sure that when you seek refuge, it is humanitarian and not forever.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon, as we think about this issue, is there anything that you want to say specifically in regards to women and children that are affected during this time?
Definitely. I got the opportunity. I was blessed in Congress to visit Ukraine a few years ago after the invasion of Crimea, and visiting some of the cities of Ukraine. And I do have a lot of Puerto Ricans serving in the U.S. Armed Forces that are stationed in Ukraine, training and doing a lot of stuff in Poland as well. And, the Ukrainian people are so humble. And they're just fighting for the same freedom and democracy our nation was founded for. And seeing, we're talking now about Ukraine, But a few months later, it could be another country in Europe that may be at the mercy of the Russian army. And that's something that we need to look at. When I see some countries that are not even willing to look at the issue, it's who's going to be next. This is unprovoked. I think that the Ukrainian people have fought to defend our country with patriotism, patient bravery. And when you see women taking arms to defend their families, to defend their home, I mean, that sends you a direct message of what happened hundreds of years ago in the United States doing the same thing. And that's the reason we should stand with them. I was blessed to be part of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly representing the United States 2 years in a row. So this is an issue about nations defending themselves. Today it's going to be Ukraine. Next one will be Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, or even Poland. We cannot allow that to happen. We cannot allow to repeat the axis of 50, 40 years ago. And in that sense, all the sanctions, we should be strong and robust. And I applaud the measures that have been taken by the administration in order to stop the Russian complete invasion of Ukraine. And I think all of us, I mean, seeing countries like the Swiss and many others that usually were neutral in times of war, taking action and expressing themselves, closing their borders. I think that's the path we need to follow.
Thank you, Congresswoman Colon. I want to take this time to just thank you both so much for taking the time to speak with us today and to share with our audience your experiences and your thoughts on the current conflict as it's unfolding. I also recognize that you have a vote to participate in. So just wanted to thank you for your time today and wishing you all the best.
Well, thank you very much, Shanique, and to the Chamber Foundation. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And Jennifer, a pleasure to be with you.
I'm happy to be here with you, Madeline, as well. I think bipartisanship can be done in many ways in Congress. And there are several issues that, I mean, we are sisters and brothers defending our communities. And in that sense, I encourage young women to run for office, young women to take leadership, right, and to step up and represent their community. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Allison Tuman Campos, and I'm the VP for Equality and Inclusion and Community Impact at Procter & Gamble. And as the mother of 2 teenage daughters myself, I'm really looking forward to this next conversation we're going to have. I have the honor of spending the next 20 minutes or so with not one, but 2 amazing youth leaders, Liz from Illinois and Daniela from Pueblo, Mexico. Before we get started, though, I just wanted to mention the long-term partnership that we've had at Procter & Gamble with Save the Children. We've been working together since 1995 in our shared commitment to supporting children and communities around the globe. We do a lot of things together that are providing donations of health and hygiene products, emergency response efforts, and clean drinking water. And one of the programs that I'm really proud of is the We See Equal project, which aims to tackle and eliminate gender bias among young adolescents in both Mexico and Indonesia. Together in these programs, we're working to ensure that 20,000 youth and more than 80,000 people in their communities demonstrate positive and equitable gender norms and attitudes. So through programs like these, we get to meet amazing young leaders, including like Liz and Daniela today. In fact, Daniela was in the We See Equal program and a participant, so I'm excited to hear her experiences about that. So let's get started with our first questions to our girl leaders today, Liz and Daniela. So why don't we start with you, Daniela, and just tell me a little bit about yourself. I'd love to hear today why you're with us and talking about girls' leadership and civic engagement, and then we'll ask Liz the same question after you. So over to you, Daniela.
Bueno, yo estoy aquí.
Yeah, so I'm here because the foundation started working with the teachers, and as far as teachers go, my own teacher, she chose me so that I could be here with you today.
Wonderful. I'm so glad she did that. So Liz, how about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're joining us today too.
Yeah, so my name's Elizabeth. I live in Northern Illinois, and I kind of got involved with Save the Children, well, scanned through my school. And I started doing a lot of things with girlhood. And kind of like aside from that, I started focusing like a lot on gender equality and like girlhood and the girl child. And then I kind of just really started getting involved with advocacy through SCAN, and then they kind of showed me this opportunity, and I was really, really excited to take it. So.
That's so great to hear. I'm so glad you're working at such a young age with Save the Children because they do so much around the world. Daniela, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the Save the Children program and the We See Equal project.
Como les comentaba, la
Well, like
fundación
I was
empezó a
sharing
trabajar
earlier, the
con los
foundation started
maestros y
working with
después con
alongside the
y los
teachers, and
maestros
as far as the teachers are concerned, they
las
were
actividades de
focusing
los
on the
alumnos y respecto a
students'
eso
activities,
eligieron a mí.
and along those lines, they chose me.
Excellent. Well, I'm so excited to hear more about how that program's going in your school. But first, let's talk a little bit about what you're passionate about. So Daniela, while you're on camera, tell us a little bit about what gets you the most excited in the work you're doing to create an equal world.
Me gusta hablar sobre
So
la
I
mujer.
like to talk
De
about
hecho, esto me pareció muy padre
the woman. I mean, this
porque
sounded really cool to
estamos
me
hablando sobre la
because
mujer y la
we're
mujer
talking about
pues también
women and the
es
female and is
no tengo palabras para
I mean, there's no
explicarte
words
qué
really
es
to
la mujer
explain what a
representa
woman
mucho
is and
en todo el
represents.
mundo.
It's so much all over the world.
How about you, Liz? I mean, Danielle is right. The importance of girls and women around the world is something we cannot underestimate and we really need to focus on. And I can tell that she's excited to talk more about that. But how about you, Liz? What are you passionate about?
I think in the realm of like gender equality, I'm really, really passionate about like girls' education. And I think, I mean, it's because like I myself am a girl and like my parents are from Kenya. So like whenever I kind of like go to Kenya, like I see and I hear a lot of girls' education. And I think other things like I'm really, really interested in like women's economic development in like other countries and a bunch of things like that, kind of like closing the really big access gap that, well, for one, COVID created and one that kind of like was already there. So.
That's so true. I think we've all been really challenged the last few years about how to make sure that the progress we've made on gender equality and a lot of the programs like Save the Children's and others, you know, that keeps moving forward, but it's been really challenging over the last couple of years. So it's great to know that, you know, young leaders like you and Daniela are getting involved even when it's not easy and it's challenging. So Liz, tell me a little bit about your experience with, you know, as we call it, civic and political engagement. We've been talking about in the forum today that the Chamber of Commerce Foundation has been hosting. So, you know, how have you played a leadership role or how have you been involved in that area?
So I don't know. I think like the one thing that I really started to notice was this is like in everything. So like in science and in like just like civic participation that you really need to have a lot of like diverse perspectives. And so I think one of the things I've like through SCAN at my school, we were talking to a lot of like our local Congress people advocating for the Girls Lead Act, which it kind of really became like a really big thing in the past, I think year at my time at SCAN. And kind of like aside from that, I also started doing a lot with climate and gender. So it's kind of like teaching girls how to advocate for climate in their local areas, like making toolkits and teaching them how to kind of reach out to Congress people in their local areas. So a bunch of things like that. And I think just through SCAN again, a lot of things regarding like girlhood and kind of a ton of other countries. So not only advocating for ourselves here, but also having our Congress people try to advocate for international like civic participation for girls, a bunch of things like that.
Oh, that's excellent. And you mentioned the LEAD Act, which is a really important piece of legislation that, you know, is under discussion. Procter & Gamble's been supporting Save the Children and their outreach efforts to really get more people aware of that act and how it can really make a difference for getting girls all around the world involved. So thanks for mentioning that one. Daniela, how about you? What are some of the leadership things you've done in your school and in this area about being involved and engaged?
La verdad, en mi escuela no he tenido ningún.
Well, honestly, at school, I really haven't had any leadership. The only leadership that I have had is this now, being able to represent Mexico and Latin America.
Well, I would say that's a pretty big step in your leadership journey, representing your school and your community and the children involved in the Save the Children work in Mexico. So thank you for doing that today. How about in your experience, why you're a young leader, why is it important for young leaders to get involved like you, to represent their school and their peers and their friends? Why is that so important to hear from young people like you?
Porque nos estamos formando.
Because we are forming ourselves as children, and so that in the future, not just us girls, but also boys can be future doctors and attorneys and teachers, and so that we can change a little bit the world and give our little bit of contribution so that we can change the world.
I think you're right, totally right about that. It's at a young age, a lot of our norms and our, sometimes our bias around who should do what jobs or who should study what subjects, those biases can start so young. So I'm really excited to know that you are representing, young students at your school and in your community to really talk about these things. The We See Equal program, I know, has both boys and girls, students of all genders, there to talk about some of the biases and get rid of some of the ones that aren't true, so that everyone can choose their path and what they want to do. So I'm excited to know that the students around you are part of that program and doing that. So thank you for that. Do you see things that the girl leaders in your school and in your classes are doing in the program? What are some of the benefits of having women and girls being leaders, whether it's in government jobs or in business jobs like we have some of the folks that are watching today? Why is that so important to have women leaders as well as male leaders?
Así igual como les comentaba.
Well, because like I was sharing earlier, we are developing and we can change our world and we can contribute in our own little ways, and perhaps our little contribution doesn't necessarily completely change the world, but with the rest of the kids and with more children, we can support and contribute to the world down the road in the future can change a little bit.
I think with the young leaders becoming leaders of tomorrow, the world's going to change a lot. So I'm excited to see what comes. Liz, let's talk to you a little bit. You mentioned before, like, the importance of diverse perspectives. So tell me a little bit about what you see as some of the benefits when you have, more diverse leadership, including women and girls.
I think like just the same exact way we ask for like diversity in race and like diversity in gender, there also really has to be a diverse like perspective and age. And I think that's because everyone has like very different experiences that like kind of when you like bring them all together, they're able to incorporate all of those. I know like for a long time, I was thinking of it in like regards to like science and like people doing like research, because when you're not kind of like thinking of like girls and thinking of women, then of course you're not creating like different ideas that can help them, as well as kind of defaulted to only men. So I think that kind of by including just not even just women's perspectives, but a bunch of different perspectives, you really are helping everyone, because you're creating like a more inclusive environment that can really just, help everyone at the end.
I think you're right on there with that perspective. At Procter & Gamble, we develop a lot of products to serve consumers all around the world, and we want to serve all consumers. So it's really important to us, as you said, to have that diversity of perspective and experiences, both from a gender perspective and the other areas that you talked about. So it's very important to us in business, and many of the companies and the people watching today are probably thinking a lot about that already. But diversity of age is something that, we could probably think about a little bit more and make sure we're thinking about how, young leaders can provide, perspective to us that we may not see since we're a bit older. I feel a little bit older today talking to both of you. So what are some of the challenges you found, in your leadership work? What are some of the challenges that come up when girls want to take on some of these leadership roles or get involved in their communities? I'd love to hear what you think about it here in your community in Northern Illinois, but also some of the experiences you've had looking at this elsewhere.
I think that obviously like the age barrier is sometimes kind of difficult because like I say, like you come like with a really like bright and great idea. A lot of times like age is just something that people kind of look at and like they already kind of like single you out because they think, you know, you can't accomplish something at that age. But I think like other challenges just include I think to make change, it's really, really important to have like a platform. And for a lot of girls, like that's not really easy to get. So kind of like the ideas that they're having and the experiences that they're having aren't really like they're not able to kind of show them in any specific way that they know of or not able to like really elaborate on them to like an audience that will listen to them. So I think that's another kind of big challenge. And the people I feel like we often need to hear from the most don't really have the resources to kind of like bring like upon that change, especially like even if we're looking like outside of the United States. I think sometimes that's always like a really, really big challenge. And then when you add age on top of that and sometimes race on top of that, it becomes hard for the people that we need to hear from the most to have a voice in those kind of areas.
I think that's a really important thing for us all to remember as we're looking for insights and voice and perspective. So I think that's something we as, you know, some of the older leaders need to remember is you need to look hard and make sure you make space to hear those other voices. So we'll need to continue to try to do that. So that was a good bit of advice about what adults can do around the world. Daniela, in Mexico, do you have thoughts about when you see a good leader or one of your teachers or someone in the community, what looks like good leadership to you? What kind of leader do you want to be as you know, are a young leader now and you continue to grow in these leadership roles? What does a good leader look like to you?
Bueno, escuchar a los
Well, to listen to the rest of the people, not ignore their opinions because that could also help them be better. And yeah, to me, that would be a good leader.
I think listening is one of the best qualities in good leaders. I think you're exactly right there. Are there things that you think the adults, you don't have to say anyone specific, but are there things that you think adults in general could do to support more space and for girls to be leaders in your community and really around the world? What can adults do to make more space for girl leaders?
To support them, like in this case, to Elizabeth and myself, our parents are supporting us and they're not leaving us behind. We have a lot of support. And if our parents love us and want to see us succeed, they're not leaving us behind. And also involve a lot of girls or boys, and also programs such as this. To me, this program seems really good because you talk to girls and boys and you listen to them, and yeah, you listen to them and you can help them to become better.
Daniela, can you tell me a little bit about the program and the project that you're in with Save the Children at your school? And you have girls and boys in that program together. What are some of the changes you see in the boys in the program at school who are learning about leadership and gender norms for girls? Do you see changes after the program has started in the boys at school?
Sí,
yes, there's more equality in our school, and also, yeah, there's more equality at school, and that's what's changed.
Excellent. I hope that there'll be even more of that in the future in your school. So I'm glad to hear that the impact of the We See Equal program is making a difference. So Liz, I'd love to ask you some of the same questions around what does a good leader look like and what can adults do to help make more opportunities for girls' leadership?
I think a good leader is like just someone who leads by example, and like leading by example is kind of someone who's like leading in like a gender responsive way, not even like a gender responsive way, but just a very like responsive way to the people that they kind of are talking about and talking to in a way that like almost connects with them. And they're just being very, very, I don't know, they seem very, very passionate about what they're doing, but they're kind of relaying it in a very, very like kind and, you know, good way. And I think what adults can do, I think again, just give like kids a platform, give like women a platform, and give women in just like different situations, like entirely different from you, kind of like a platform, and try to listen to them and like understand what you can do. Because I think when people from very, very different backgrounds come together and try to like achieve the same exact thing, it works a lot better than one person from one very specific background. And I think also with that, like everything they're doing, like if it's like working with business or working in the government, just making sure that it's like gender responsive, and they're trying to like look for and like account for what women face across a variety of different contexts, and just like always having kind of just not even women, just very specific people at the forefront of their mind to make sure that they're catering for them.
That's great advice. I think, often we get comfortable with sort of our own experience in the world, and that's how we see the world. So, making sure we make space to see the experiences of others is a great lesson for business leaders, as well as leaders in, in the public domain and in government as well. So, so I get very inspired talking to young leaders like you. It makes me very excited, positively thinking towards the future. And I'd love to hear what your vision is. So Liz, I'll start with you. Tell me a little bit about your vision for the future and what inspires you about what's ahead of us.
My vision for the future would just be every single girl has 12 years of education, because I think when you're looking at kind of what that entails for like absolutely everything. So for like closing the access gap, I know climate change, like if every single girl had 12 years of education, you'd be approaching a lot of things very differently. Healthcare, I think that in like an ideal future in my head, every single girl would have an education, and then consequently kind of every single thing would just be like bumped up another level, because we're having a whole entire new array of different perspectives that are really helping everyone across like every single different little area. So
that would be a pretty powerful thing if all the girls around the world got a full education of 12 years. So that's a great vision. I love that. Daniela, tell me about what you look forward to in the future, and what's your vision of the world? How do you want to see the world in the future?
Pues que no haya
so that there's no inequality between men and women, and that girls can have the same rights as men do.
I think that's another great vision. It starts with education, and it goes to so much more in our world when we see equal. So I think that's great. I'm going to make sure that you girls have the last word. So Daniela, what's the last message that you want to give to the people watching today, business leaders and supporters of the Chamber of Commerce Foundation? What's the last thing you want to share with us today?
Decirles que las niñas y mujeres
I'll let you know that girls and women are able to do many things, and that there's no inequality in the world.
I think you're right about that. Girls and women can do many things, and we need to make a lot more space and a lot more opportunity. So thank you for that. And same question to you, Liz. I would love to give you the last word and tell us, what do you want the folks here today to take away as the message from you as a young leader?
I think like basically the same exact thing, and then adding on that they just have like just women in general have very, very different perspectives that are just positively added like absolutely everywhere. So I think just like with whatever you're doing, I kind of like in whatever sector it is, as long as you like take the time to listen and try to think of like how you can kind of move it into what you're doing and implement it to what you're doing, and just making sure that you're advocating for like women and girls alike, that it will really, really help everyone. So
well, there you have it. I think those are great pieces of advice from these two young leaders. I really want to leave them with the last word, because I think we can all learn a lot when we listen to the leaders of today, actually, not just the leaders of tomorrow. Youth leaders have a lot for us to learn from today, and I hope that everyone listening today and joined us found this insightful. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Daniela. It's been wonderful to meet you, even though this is how we meet now on Zoom, but thank you for all you're doing at your school, in your community, and the support and the time you're spending, advocating for Save the Children and their programs and being part of their programs, and making sure that support comes for things like the Girls Lead Act, which will make space and make opportunities for girls in civic and political engagement and in their own communities for leadership. So thank you both. It was great to meet you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.